on Matzah Shabbos, and they certainly can't take on Shabbos because you're not allowed to take haircuts on Shabbos. They're allowed to take haircuts already on Friday. It's important to point out the most important part is taking the haircut for Yom Tov. That's covered of Yom Tov. And the idea of not taking during Shloshis Simei HaGabbalah is a stringency, and it's an important stringency, and it's based on Kabbalah, etc. But we don't let that get in the way of the mitzvah of kavod of Yom Tov, of honoring the Yom Tov. And in this case, if a person is going to take a haircut on a Friday, he'll also be adding honor to Shabbos as well. So we find that the Reb Chaim Vital, it is written about him, the student of the Arizal, that it was a year when the day before Shavuos was on a Shabbos, Shavuos was on a Sunday, and according to Kabbalah, it's important to wait until the 49th day, until Erev Shavuos. So he went and he took a haircut on Friday. He did it on the 48th day, not on the 49th day, because the idea of taking a haircut for Yom Tov, not to come into Yom Tov menuvel, looking ugly, disgusting, not an appropriate manner for Yom Tov, that trumps any other consideration. It's important to understand this point. B'chalal, every Yom Tov, it's important to go and take a haircut. Generally, for Yom Tov, it's important to have a proper haircut for Yom Tov. And if a person doesn't take a haircut for Yom Tov, it's considered that he came into Yom Tov menuvel and not in a proper way. Erev Shavuos is even stronger because people didn't take haircuts throughout the entire Sphira. So therefore, that's an extremely important idea. One of the Svarim write that this is actually part of our commemoration of Achakalei B'chol Yom She'yaveh, of waiting for Mashiach at all times, because the real reason that we should take a haircut in Erev Yom Tov, because when we come to the Beis Hamikdash, you're not allowed to come to the Beis Hamikdash, a person's megutel aseir has a lot of hair. And since we know Mashiach is going to come at any given moment, so we can't wait. Yom Tov, we have a mitzvah to go, every Yid has to go into the Beis Hamikdash to bring their karbanos. Under ordinary circumstances, not everybody has to go into the Beis Hamikdash. But it comes to Yom Tov, you have your sacrifices that you have to bring. And there's a mitzvah of Mikdashi Tiro, of fearing the Beis HaMikdash, showing awe, demonstrating awe of the Beis HaMikdash. Coming with long hair is not appropriate. So, since we know Beis HaMikdash will be built at any moment, then we're going to have to come in Yom Tov. And we can't take haircuts in Yom Tov, so therefore we have to take it before Yom Tov. Just explaining the significance of the haircut, but really it shouldn't be done until Sunday, Erev Shavuos, this year. You're allowed to take a haircut all day long, even after midday. Not a good idea to wait right until before Yom Tov. Some people are particular to take before midday instead of waiting until after midday, but strictly speaking, you're allowed to take after midday as well. And you're allowed to even take the night before. You don't have to wait until Erev Shavuos in the morning. You could do the night of Erev Shavuos, Matzah Shabbos. Normally, Matzah Shabbos, Saturday night, is not a good time to take haircuts. It actually indicates a lack of respect for Shabbos. Shabbos is over. Oh, suddenly you're taking a haircut. But over here, there's a reason you didn't take before Shabbos. You didn't take before Shabbos because it was during the days of Svira. So you're allowed to take on Matzah Shabbos as well. One of the mitzvahs of Yom Tov is the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov, v'samachta b'chagecha, being happy and rejoicing on Yom Tov. The mitzvah is you have to be happy, your children have to be happy, your wife has to be happy, your whole entire family has to be happy. And how do we bring about this simcha in the family? So men, their simcha comes through a cup of wine. We'll talk about that when we get to Yom Tov. For children, we give them roasted wheat and nuts. I'm assuming today's day and age, if you give roasted wheat and nuts, that might not work. But there is the equivalent of roasted wheat and nuts, which is some type of sweets and delicacies and toys and presents and all kind of beautiful things. And of course, if we're Yidden and Chassidim and we try to do things in a spiritual way, we'll give them a holy roasted wheat and nuts, a special new siddur or a Judaica book, etc. And for women, we're supposed to buy them clothing and tachshitim and jewelry. And that is a mitzvah like any other mitzvah, and it's a mitzvah which gives you an opportunity to do something for someone else, and especially for a spouse. So it's a great mitzvah. It's a great mitzvah to focus on. When we think about ourselves, we're supposed to think about other people too. When it comes to Yom Tov, when we're giving ourselves to eat, the Torah says you should think about the Yosim, the orphan, the almana, the widow, all the poor people, people that close up their doors of their house and only themselves, them and their wife and their children eat. They don't feed the poor. That's not simcha of a mitzvah, that's simcha of their stomach. Such a simcha that Rambam writes, Kolin, it's an embarrassment. So if we're thinking about Yom Tov, making sure we all have properly outfitted for Yom Tov, and we have cheesecake and chocolate pudding and who knows what, we should think about many other people that don't have, and before Yom Tov already make sure they have enough money and they can buy food, clothing for their children, for their wives. They should have a proper, true simcha, especially that Shavuos. We need to have more simcha than any other Yom Tov, more happiness, because it's the Yom Tov that the Torah was given. And even those opinions that say that technically, in theory, a person could fast on Yom Tov, which isn't halacha, when it comes to Shavuos, nobody holds of that. Shavuos, Yeshua, has to be lachem. We have to take benefit because it's the day that we receive the Torah. We have to eat and drink and rejoice. And if we want to rejoice properly, we have to make sure that other people rejoice with us as well. That's all in terms of preparation for Shavuos. Moving on in the preparation list, we spoke about Friday starting the Shloshis Mehagbel, the 3 days of preparation, and then comes Shabbos before Shavuos. On this Shabbos, we're going to be saying the last chapter of Pirkei Avos, of the ethics of our fathers as a preparation for Shavuos, chapter number 6. The original custom was to say Pirkei Avos 6 weeks between Pesach and Shavuos, and then that custom extended to say it also throughout the summer, but the primary times to say it right now in the actual last chapter, which is the siyum, the conclusion of Masechtas Avos, is the Peder called Kinyan Torah, which is all about how to acquire the Torah, the most suitable, appropriate preparation for Torah. And on Shabbos is a very good time to think again about the Achdus, the unity that we're supposed to accomplish between us and other people. Shabbos is in general a time of unity. The Rebbe asked many years ago that on Shabbos, before Shabbos Erev Chodesh Sivan, that year Shabbos was Erev Chodesh, that people should get together and have a Shabbos dedicated for the theme of Achdus, of unity, especially Shabbos afternoon, getting together, bringing men separately, women separately, and talk Torah, obviously Yisrael, Achdus Yisrael, etc. So it's a good idea to dedicate and designate this Shabbos for that idea. On the last day, on Erev Shavuos, the 49th day, last day of counting La'omer, is also a time for those who have studied Masechta Soita, 1 page a day, 1 folio a day, which is the custom in Chabad. They will have their opportunity to finish Masechta Soita. And those who didn't start, the Rebbe spoke a number of times that they can start now. It's never too late. It's always a good idea to join this and be part of it. As the lesson of Pesach Sheni, never too late. There's always a second chance. The very last preparation for Shavuos is, and that happened when we received the Torah, was the Jewish people on the 5th of Sivan said, Nasa before Nishma. They said, we will do before they even heard what the Torah is, what they're receiving in the Torah. And on this day, on Erev Shavuos, the day before Yom Tov, is a good time to think about the idea of Hagdamas Nasa L'Nishma, to think about that every single thing that comes to us, we're supposed to first do, and then we'll try to understand. It's a busy day, it's Erev Yom Tov, we have a lot of things to prepare for. We have all the tzarchei achag, all the needs for Yom Tov, a lot of cooking and baking and shopping and cleaning and all of that. But it's an appropriate time to do whatever we can to make the proper preparations for Shavuos. We mentioned earlier that the tzad shekenega, the opposing factors, the klipa, the evil forces, the prosecutors, don't really have much control when it comes to Shavuos time. So it's a good time to think about it, spend time, and prepare properly for Shavuos. And as mentioned, that includes also the technical preparations, cutting haircuts, cutting nails. Those who have long nails, well, they should really make sure to cut them in Erev Yom Tov. Ideally, we don't cut toenails and hand nails on the same day, but if a person didn't cut them the day before, being ready and properly dressed and appropriately looking properly for Yom Tov is of importance. And if a person didn't cut their toenails, they should cut them on Erev Yom Tov, even though they have to also cut their hand nails that day. The Halachos says that on Erev Yom Tov in general, specifically Erev Shavuos, we shouldn't do any blood checkups. The Halacha talks about bloodletting, which is not exactly blood testing, but since it's a question of a sakana of danger, and Erev Yom Tov is a form of danger, particularly Erev Shavuos, with taking blood, so unless it's absolutely necessary, one shouldn't be taking blood at a medical exam on Erev Yom Tov. When we make our preparations for Shavuos, we spend a lot of time on having dairy food. So I want to speak a few minutes about the idea of dairy food. There is a halacha that you're not allowed to have dairy bread or meat bread. I just got the other day from our kashrus department a question about a particular type of bread that one of our establishments make, which is dairy, and how to make sure that it's done in an appropriate way. One of the appropriate ways is if the form of the bread looks totally different, before you finish baking it, you change the form, so you could tell that this is dairy or meat, or if you're making a very, very small amount. The reason why Shabbos, many people, their bread was fleshy, because it was made in a meat oven, because they're making it only for Shabbos. The reason why for Shavuos it's okay to make dairy bread, because it was either made differently or it's eaten only for one day, just for the Shavuos day. If a person indeed will be baking bread, dairy bread, many days before Shavuos, then not on Erev Shavuos, that would be a problem, because it's only if it's made for the if you eat it the next day. If you're going to be eating dairy on the second day of Shavuos, the bread, you can't go on Erev Yom Tov and prepare dairy bread for the second day of Shavuos unless it's very obvious that it's dairy, or you change the form of the bread, it's not a regular type of bread. Sweets, cakes, cookies, those kind of things, which people don't usually eat them in a meal. They're eaten separately. You don't eat them with your meat. You're allowed to make them dairy. So that's why people have cheesecakes, not only because cheesecakes you could tell they're dairy, but also because cakes and cookies and confectionery, those kind of things, halachas about bread, things that people eat with their meat and eat with their milk. The reason why you're not allowed to make dairy bread is because there's a concern someone might eat the bread with meat. But if it's cakes, that concern doesn't apply. It's still a good idea. It's smart to write on the package or whatever it is, some type of indication that people should know that this pastry they're eating is really dairy, because some people just might not know. So some of us are lucky and we have 2 ovens and 2 stoves, and some people have 3. We have dairy and we have meat and we have para, but not everybody is that lucky, and they want to use their meat oven and kasher it. Now, we normally don't kasher from meat to milk or milk to meat, but in this case, there's room for leniency. They want to kosher it and make their dairy stuff in their meat oven. So the simple solution is, I'm not going to go into the details why this is the case. You could just turn on the oven on the highest setting, leave it lit for an hour for some amount of time, and for kashering from meat to dairy, that should really work. Somebody wants to be more stringent, and there's reasons for stringency, and he wants to run a whole self-clean cycle. That certainly is fine. Hopefully they won't break their oven. On Yom Tov itself, you can't kasher. It's a bit too late to wake up on Yom Tov and try to kasher the oven. There's certain forms of kashering which are permissible in Yom Tov, but generally the way we do it in our ovens, it's problematic. You could still use your meat oven and have everything wrapped, double wrapped properly. Make sure the rack is totally clean. Make sure everything is wrapped. Cover, ideally, the rack with silver foil. You're not allowed to cut silver foil in Yom Tov for this purpose, but you could have pre-cut silver foil. So if everything is sealed, it's it's not a good idea to rely on this unless it's double wrapped, and even double wrapped is not a good idea to rely on it. So there is a form of kashering that's permissible on Yom Tov, which is, I mean, the oven, assuming the fire is already on from before, because you can't turn on the fire on Yom Tov, but people will take a kettle of pre-boiled water. You're not allowed to boil water for the purpose of kashering, but it's already been boiled. It's in the urn. Or you heat up the water for another purpose, and you're using the leftover water, and you put the water into the oven, and that creates a lot of steam into the oven. That's another form of kashering that could be done. A lot of people don't want to do this and not interested in putting dairy stuff into the meat oven, and for very good reasons, and they also don't want to do all this kashering stuff. But what they do want to do is they have their hot plate, and their hot plate is usually used for their cholent for every single Shabbos. But they are now having a dairy meal, and they want to heat up dairy food on their meat hot plate. So if the hot plate is clean, it doesn't have any meat remnants and residue on it, and if you're taking the dairy food and you're putting in a piece of silver foil, again, you can't cut on Shabbos Yom Tov a piece of silver. You could have pre-cut. So if that really should be perfectly fine. That's not a problem. You could put it directly on the hot plate with that piece of silver foil in between. Again, provided the hot plate is clean. Some people want to heat up food. There's certain cakes that are better hot. I mean, probably a lot of people from the listeners, from the ladies gallery, would be able to tell me which kind of food is better if it's hot, which kind of cakes and cookies are better hot. One thing comes to mind right now, I think apple strudel, some people like hot. So it's parav, it's not dairy, and you want to heat it up and you put it on top of your meat pot, on top of the covering of the meat pot. That's fine, but you can't eat it afterwards with dairy, even though it is parav. But once you put it on top of that meat pot, you can't eat it directly with dairy itself. If you want to eat dairy afterwards, that depends if the pot was open, the pot was closed. But with dairy, that's for sure a problem. You can't eat it because it's actually being heated directly on that meat pot. In a lot of communities, have the custom of setting up branches of trees and flowers and grass in the shuls, and this is for a number of reasons. A, because we're being judged on the fruits of the tree on Shavuos. B, because of the joy of Mount Torah, it resembles Mount Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, etc. But the Kama Chabad custom is not to do so, although the Rebbe said that I believe that in Nikolai, where he lived, they did so, but that's not the Kama Chabad custom. It's not practiced in Chabad shuls today. And There's reasons for that. One of the reasons is because in temples and churches, lahavdil, they do these kind of things, and we keep a distance from anything that they do. It might even be a question of chukas hagoyim and following the ways of the non-Jews. So this is not done in shuls. But some people in their houses, they would like to have flowers. It's quite a common custom. People do that any Shabbos and any Yom Tov, certainly when it comes to Shavuos. So setting up these flowers on Yom Tov is not a problem. You let them move them on Yom Tov. It's not muktzah. As long as you were thinking of, before Yom Tov, you're already planning to set up these flowers, it's not muktzah. Any roses that have a smell are not muktzah anyhow. But the leaves and petals and all those things that fall out are muktzah. You can't move it off the table with your hand. You can't even take a knife or something else and move it off the table, because you're not allowed to move muktzah with your hand, or you're not allowed to move muktzah even through another item, which is an extension of your hand. So you can't take a spoon or fork or knife and move it with it. More about that in the shir on the laws of muktzah. This is a plug for the Power Hour on Tuesday night, where we're going through the laws of muktzah. If you want to move it, you can move it with your body, not with your hand. So on the back of your hand, with your arm, you could go like this. That's fine. You're allowed to move muktzah, what we call tiltil begufa, but you can't move it with your hand or even with an item that you're holding in your hand. Putting the flowers in water. So you're allowed to put the flowers in water on Yom Tov, but there's a number of conditions here. Number one, flowers, roses that still haven't opened up completely, they open up, the roses, when they're in water. If they haven't opened up, then you can't put them in water. So we'll talk about that it doesn't open up at all, or was already fully open. Even so, you can't put water into the vase. If the vase has water, you can put the flowers in it. The water was there from before Yom Tov. Now you're adding the flowers into it. You took it out of the water, you're allowed to put it back into the water. But you're not allowed to change. This is a mistake that a lot of people make. You're not allowed to change the water. You can't change the water and get rid of the old one and get new water. When it comes to adding water is a whole different story. So again, assuming that the flowers do not open up or they're fully open, then on Shabbos, you're not allowed to add water. On Yom Tov, you're allowed to add up to half of what's there, because if you're adding more than half, then it's not considered adding. It's like new water. You can't add new water. You can't put new water. Some people are very particular with flowers that open up, not even to move the vase, because every time they move it, they argue that the roses and the flowers will open up more. I'm not sure if that's really true or not. It's debatable if that's a true fact, but some people are particular about that. You're allowed to smell the roses. There's no problem smelling roses on Shabbos and Yom Tov, even if it's attached to the ground, attached to a stem, to its root. Anything edible, you're not allowed to smell on Shabbos and Yom Tov when it's attached, because you might detach it. But roses which are not edible, you're allowed to smell. And generally, if I'm talking about smelling roses, you make a bracha when you smell them. Anything which grows on a stem, you make a bracha b'irei atzi b'samim, like hadassim. Anything which is not a stem, just a blade, then you make a bracha b'irei isvei b'samim. This is all about our preparation on Erev Shabbos, on Erev Yom Tov for Shavuos. So we went through the menu, we went through the flowers. There's going to the mikveh on Erev Yom Tov, of course. And the time of the Beis Hamikdash was very important, because people had to go, for men that is, people had to go to the Beis Hamikdash. And this is the only time everybody had to make sure they're pure, because they're going to be going into the Beis Hamikdash, they're going to be eating sacrificial meat. Every Yom Tov is a mitzvah to eat shalmei simcha, sacrificial meat. So it's important to purify oneself. In addition to that, the stuff that we got to do in Erev Yom Tov, we're giving charity, tzedakah. We give tzedakah every single day. Yom Tov, we won't be able to give tzedakah. So on Erev Yom Tov, we're going to be giving for the next 2 days. This year, Monday and Tuesday. Every Erev Shabbos and every Yom Tov. And this is something that the Rebbe specifically Shavuos asked to remind people that Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov, we should give tzedakah for the days of Shavuos. And again, as mentioned earlier, we should think about all other needy people that need to have tzedakah. And there's a time when the time of Matan Torah, of giving of the Torah, we should add extra now tzedakah and make our tzedakah in such a way as if it's a brand new beginning, as if we never gave tzedakah before. Set up your Shabbos clocks in a way that the time should match up. If you have, if the lights or whatever it is dependent on your Shabbos clocks, make sure it fits in for the 2 days of Yom Tov. On Erev Yom Tov, after the 10th hour in the day, which is about 4:37, you're not supposed to sit down and have a proper meal in, because you're supposed to eat the meal on Yom Tov with proper appetite. So do that earlier. Get ready to bench your licht, light candles, but you're going to have to be lighting candles on the second day Yom Tov, and you can't create a new flame on Yom Tov. So set up something, some system that you'll be able to have a new flame on Yom Tov. You can leave your gas on. You can have a 24-hour candle, a 48 candle that's lit. Sometimes the ones that are written in the store for 24 hours are not really 24 hours, or they go out earlier, so you might want to get a 48-hour candle. Important to mention, Nishmarta Moedel Nafshesechem, preserving our safety and health. So people leave their ovens on, stoves on, especially Shavuos. So it's important to make sure there's proper cross ventilation. Leave a window open, leave a door open. Make sure your smoke detector is working. Make sure your carbon monoxide detectors are working. I don't have to explain how important and critical that is. When we light our candles before Yom Tov, some of those candles, especially the Neronim style, they stick to the glass. So you could do it for Shabbos when it comes 2 days Yom Tov. Once it sticks to the glass, it's very hard the next day to put in a second candle in there. It would be a good idea to put a tiny bit of water or a tiny bit of oil before Yom Tov, a little amount, so the bottom of the candle doesn't stick to the glass, and then you'll be able to clean it easily on the second day Yom Tov, on the night of the second night of Yom Tov, and light candles then. Those who have a yahrzeit over Yom Tov, they want to light a neshama licht and a neshama candle. Some people, anyhow, have this custom. It's not a Chabad custom, but a lot of people have this custom. They light a candle every time they say Yisker, which is the second day Yom Tov. So you shouldn't be lighting it on Yom Tov. You really should light it before Yom Tov, because this is not a candle that you need for the meal, that you need for shul. It's a candle for covered honor of the person who has yahrzeit, the person that Yisker is being set for. So unless it's being lit in shul, by the place where the chazan davens, or it's lit by the table, by the meal, it's not for Yom Tov. It should really be lit on Erev Yom Tov. We check our pockets on Erev Yom Tov, just like Shabbos. Shabbos we check to make sure we're not carrying, because you're not allowed to carry on Shabbos where there's no Erev. And Yom Tov we check to make sure we don't have muktzah in our pockets. And then we light our candles, and our custom is that we light candles before Yom Tov the same way that we do it before Shabbos. Even though technically you're allowed to light candles on Yom Tov proper, but it's appropriate to light at the same time early before Yom Tov comes in. The only difference is if you made a mistake and became late and became early Yom Tov, you're allowed to light on Yom Tov. You just have to have a prepared fire. You can't create a new flame. You can only light from a pre-existing flame. I will mention Yom Tov. It's very common that people make a mistake and they forget to light candles, and there's a number of reasons for that. Because you have time. So you don't do it in the regular time on Erev Yom Tov, because I could do it by night. People go out more, they're eating out by other people, and they totally forget about lighting candles. And if a person forgets to light candles, it becomes an issue if they have to light an extra candle every single week. So it's good to make a special mental reminder somehow not to forget to light candles. And one of the ways is by lighting the same regular time as always on Erev Yom Tov. The second night you have to wait until it's nighttime, but at least on Erev Yom Tov to light the regular time. The Yom Tov candle should not be used for other purposes, for cigarettes, which anyhow you shouldn't be smoking, to turn on the gas or anything else. It should be used only for religious, holy stuff. And now Yom Tov Shavuos has come in, the holy day when the Torah was given, also the yahrzeit of the Baal Shem Tov, a very, very special day, also the yahrzeit of David HaMelech. The day that we receive the Torah, it's a time to think about accepting upon ourselves the yoke of Torah, adding something that we're going to do, something extra in Torah that we haven't done till now, whether in learning Torah, whether strengthening Torah, whether supporting Torah. And of course, it's an appropriate time to daven for Mashiach. Shavuos is a time of geula, of redemption. The Rebbe spoke a number of times that the words Nami Lachem, Nami Lachem means it's Osa for you. Shavuos is the Yom Tov, which everybody agrees is Osa for us. We're supposed to eat and drink and rejoice more than any other Yom Tov. Those two words, Nami Lachem, is the numerical value of the word Kates, the end of Golus, the end of exile, the time of redemption. It's a time to pray that we should have Mashiach. So that's all of that we should think about when the Yom Tov comes in, when we're lighting our candles for Yom Tov, and when the Yom Tov comes in, and throughout the Yom Tov. We start davening late. So women expect your husbands slightly later than any other Shabbos and Yom Tov, because we daven late on the first night of Yom Tov. We want to make sure that we have a full 49 days and 7 weeks of Sfira. They're supposed to be Tmimus complete, and we don't want to start Ma'ariv, the evening service, earlier, because then it's as if we're missed out. We didn't have a full 49 days, and only when it's 100% nightfall, that's when we start davening Ma'ariv prayers in a Yom Tov Nusach. And after Ma'ariv, we go home and we make Kiddush. A woman who lit candles and set Shechiyanu at candlelighting shouldn't say again Shechiyanu at Kiddush. Yom Tov, one of the big issues that come of Yom Tov is carrying. Carrying is one of the things that are permissible in Yom Tov, are forbidden on Shabbos, unless in a place which has an Eir, which is approved by the local rabbis. Of course, Crown Heights does not have that. So Yom Tov, however, you're allowed to carry. But even in Yom Tov, you're only allowed to carry things that you need for Yom Tov, and anything which you don't need on Yom Tov, or even if you need it only for the next day, you can't carry from one day to the other. You're not allowed to even take back home something that you could keep in the place where it is. So if you have something which is gonna you took something to shul and you have a locker in a shul, you're not allowed to take it home unless you actually need it at home. Some people are very particular about not taking their talis. The Rebbe Rashab told of people about holding their talis in their hand. I'm assuming the reason is because you could wear your talis. So why should you hold your talis in your hand if you could actually wear it? It's unnecessary carrying. Carrying a pack of keys on a keychain and you only need one key, so the extra keys might be considered extra carrying. Furthermore, even taking out the garbage could be a question in Yom Tov. Now, the problem is the garbage, let's leave the muktzah issue, but the problem is you don't really want to take out the garbage because you want the garbage to be there. It's because you don't want the garbage to be here. And that creates a very serious issue. Are you allowed to take out garbage on Yom Tov? So if the garbage has a horrible smell, or you need the place where the garbage is because you need to put more garbage there, then it's not a problem to take out the garbage. But if the garbage is not in your house, it doesn't bother you, it's outside in the yard, you want to take it out to the street so they should collect the garbage, that's certainly not permissible on Yom Tov. So that's in terms of carrying. The same thing, by the way, applies to the Tikkun Leil Shavuos. People up throughout the entire night learning Tikkun, they want to bring the Tikkun home, and they finish saying Tikkun, and there's no reason to bring it home. They have a place in shul they could keep it, it's protected. They actually not allowed to take it home. Talking about Tikkun Leil Shavuos is a beautiful custom. It brought in Svarim to be up the entire night and to learn Torah. The Rebbe made some corrections to the standard version of Tikkun Leil Shavuos. It's important to note that. Those, when you're saying the Tikkun, make sure you know those two corrections that the Rebbe made, because there's some typos in the standard Tikkun Leil Shavuos. But the idea is to learn Torah. Wasting time and talking mundane matters. It's not what Shavuos night is all about. The gain that you gain from being up at night and learning, you lose that by the loss of wasting time the night before receiving the Torah with Dvarim B'Teilim. If a person is Yosef Batel, is sitting idle, it's as if he's sleeping. So you're not considered, you pained yourself by staying up. It's considered as if you slept and you spoke mundane matters. Poskim talk very strongly. One should not talk sichas chulin, idle talk throughout the night. Sometimes when there's a lot of people around, it's harder for people. It's harder tries to get people to talk nonsense. Baal Shem Tov asks you should try until after kedusha of Musaf not to talk nonsense. Gives us the Kesser Torah, special crown of Torah. If a person knows if they're going to be up all night, they'll wake up late the next day. They won't be able to be up in time for Krishma. They won't be able to be in time on davening. Then it's pointless for them to be up. So whoever's being up should make sure that everything that matters, the bottom line is what matters, and therefore the next day they make sure they wake up properly and say Shema properly and daven properly with proper kavana. At the end of the night, is a custom to go to a mikveh, and that's how we receive the special inspiration from the holy divine mikveh, the Keser Elyon, the holy divine supernal light of Keser. And there's a custom for men to go to the mikveh towards the end of the night, right before it becomes night. Once it becomes day, then we have all the halachos of daytime. Before that, I will just mention, before I get to the halachos of daytime, that there's two general approaches. If a person's up a whole night, should they, right in the morning, go and daven? Or should they go to sleep first? And the preferred general, depending on the person, the preferred general approach is to sleep a bit, so the davening should be with a clear head. So if a person didn't sleep at all, they just try to rush the davening, go to sleep as soon as possible. Better to go to sleep for a few hours, but only for a few hours. In fact, if a person knows they'll go to sleep and no one's going to wake them up for davening, they might not be allowed to go to sleep to begin with. So they have to set up a system that they'll wake up properly, say Shema on time, but just sleep for a bit of hours. And in the morning, we say our customers, we say the regular brachas as normal. You're not allowed to learn Torah from when it becomes a break of dawn until you say Birchas HaTorah. So make sure in the morning you say the bracha of Torah. Now, bracha of Torah is a very special bracha. Bracha for men, it's a bracha for women, and it's a bracha that it says on Shulchan Aruch, it's supposed to make that bracha with more happiness than any pleasure in the world. So when you're making the bracha, you're jumping out of joy. You're lucky that you're sitting and learning Torah. Now we're supposed to be doing this every day, certainly in the day that we're receiving the Torah. And when we say the bracha b'chazai, we should think about the holiness of Torah, not just the Torah itself, that we're connected with Hashem via the Torah. And if we think about the spirituality of Torah, the holiness of Torah, which is what Hashem gave us the Torah, we become one with Hashem. And that's something to think about in general, especially on the day of Matan Torah. Talking about something that we're supposed to be thinking in general, and especially on this day, is 6 remembrances that we say every day now, davening, at the end of the prayers. One of them is to remember the fact that we stood at Mount Sinai, at Har Sinai. It's a mitzvah in the Torah to remember that. So it's a general mitzvah on a daily basis. Every day when we say the Shema, before we say the Shema, we say the words Uvanu v'charta, Hashem chose us, v'kedaftonu, you brought us close. That means that Hashem gave us the Torah, He brought us close to Mount Sinai. So every day we're supposed to be thinking that. But especially talking about Shavuos is a good time to be more focused on those words, on the fact of fulfilling this mitzvah of remembering of saying the Torah, remembering of receiving the Torah, excuse me. And then we have the davening, after we slept for a few hours, we have the davening of the first day of Shavuos, which is a full-fledged regular davening, which includes also Hallel, it's a mitzvah to say Hallel. If you didn't say Hallel, you could say it throughout the day until night, but you really should be saying it early with a proper to say Hallel with a minyan. So the proper way of saying Hallel is B'tzibur. Some communities have a custom before they start reading the Torah, they recite Akdomas. It's not our custom of us printer in our Siddur. The Rebbe wants to explain that we don't like getting caught up with all the beautiful glory of Hashem and the beauty of the palace. You want to go straight into the Torah without any preparations. They were afraid if people are going to recite Akdamas, they might get caught up with Akdamas and forget about the significance of the reading of the Torah. In this reading of the Torah, we have the reading of the Aseres HaDibros, which is part of the general mitzvah of listening to the reading of the Torah. And particularly when we say the Aseres HaDibros, the Medrash says every time we read this section, it's as if we're standing by Har Sinai and receiving the Torah. And just like the very first time at Mount Sinai, all men, women, children, including little kids, were all there. In fact, the little kids were the guarantors. Hashem said He wants guarantors for receiving the Torah. They were the guarantors. So we make sure that everybody is there, including our little kids, provided it's okay as far as health is concerned. The Rebbe asked if we could even get kids from a month and up, if health-wise it's okay, and if somebody wants, it could even be under a month, that Rebbe mentioned. And we should be focused by the fact that we're standing right now by Mount Sinai, hearing the Aseres HaDibros from Hashem Himself. That was something that the Rebbe encouraged very strongly, starting from the year Tafshi Mem, 1980. The Rebbe made a campaign to get children to come to shul. It's a good idea in general that we should always go to shul, but particularly on Shavuos, and especially the children. In fact, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, already said when he was a little kid, he was just under 5 years old. He remembers his teacher told him about how important his Erev Shul is to be in the shul when we receive the Torah, and he said to wake up an hour earlier than normal, come to shul, and get ready for receiving the Torah on Shavuos. During davening, we have the Shachris davening and the Musaf davening. In Musaf, we go through all the sacrifices that are brought on Shavuos, and that's not the private sacrifice, that's the communal sacrifices. And sometimes people can make a mistake and say the wrong things. It's important to get a proper siddur, make sure you know in advance what you're saying. There's actually a total of 24 animals that are being brought as a carbon, as a sacrifice on Shavuos, which correspond to the 24 books of Torah, and it corresponds to the 24 special ornaments that are kala, that a bride wears, and we're Hashem's bride on Shavuos. In fact, the 24 animals are split into groups of 13 and 11, the 24 sacrifices, and the books of Torah are split into 13 and 11, and the ornaments of the kala also split into 13 and 11, but I'm not going to discuss that now. Some people had a custom that would say on Shavuos, Mazel Tov for receiving the Torah, but the meaning is in order that not to disturb the davening, it became the custom to wait until after davening and only say then the Mazel Tov. Some people have to be conscious of the fact that we try not to interrupt during davening. And like I said, the feast of Shavuos is very important because the eating and drinking is very important because it's the Yom Tov that we receive the Torah. So we make Kiddush and we eat our meal. In order to fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush properly, you need to have a meal after Kiddush. A meal can mean one of two things. Kiddush without a meal is not called Kiddush. A meal can mean a cup of wine. Ideally, it should be another cup of wine besides the Kiddush cup. And a full revius, amount of Kiddush, which is about 3 ounces, give or take. Or alternatively, we could have food, which is either hamoitzi or mezainis, about the size of a half egg, the size of a kazayas. So otherwise, we have enough of full mitzvah of kiddush. If you're listening to someone say kiddush and then later you want to eat your meal much later, that's not called having kiddush. So we have the kiddush, we eat something, we eat a proper meal for the day. It's a very special meal. It's a meal of Yom Tov. It's a meal of that we've merited to go and receive the Torah from Hashem. It's almost like an arayim finish when we take a child into a cheder for the first time. Well, it's not almost, it is. And the custom is to eat dairy food on Shavuos. It's a custom. There's a mitzvah to eat meat on every Yom Tov. But there's a custom to eat dairy. Now, how do we accomplish both? So we eat milk and meat, just to make sure not to violate the prohibition of eating basar b'cholav, of eating meat and milk together. So we first eat dairy. The general custom is to eat mezainis, cake, cookies, pastries, and later to wash our hands for a proper, full-fledged meat meal. One of the reasons brought to eat nor to eat dairy is because one of the sacrifices that were brought on Shavuos is the two breads, the two loaves of bread. By having two meals, first a dairy meal and then a meat meal, the dairy meal we're eating mezainis, that's also considered a bread. And then we're eating a meat meal, so we're having two loaves of bread, and you can't use the same bread that you use for a dairy meal in a meat meal. But the custom of dairy shouldn't take away the mitzvah, a rabbinic mitzvah of simchas yom, rejoicing yontiv, of eating meat. Generally, we're supposed to, if we eat too much bread, we run into a lot of, too much mezainis, we run into a number of problems. The main mitzvah is washing, having bread. Also, if you eat a lot of mezainis, you might eat something which is called a kviyas suda, a fixed meal, and you become full from that. There might be a question of you have to make hamaitzi in your mezainis. So, a bit of dairy, and then you move on to what's important, which is the meat. And not in one meal, you have to wait the proper amount of time. We'll get to that in a moment. But before I mention that, we hear kiddush, we had some wine. Usually everybody drinks some wine. Once you make a bracha on wine, you don't have to make a bracha on any other liquids. If you can have a cup of milk or water or whatever it is, if you were planning to have it when you had the wine, when you made a blessing on the wine, or it was in front of you, the liquids were in front of you, you don't make a bracha on any of those other liquids. So you drink a sip of wine and then the rest of the liquids without a bracha. When it comes to the after blessings, if you're going to be making an after blessing on your wine, ala gefen, because you drank a full measurement, as we said, about 3 ounces, then you don't make another after blessing on any of those liquids either. If you don't make a bracha because you didn't make kiddush, you just had a sip, so you're not making an after blessing on the wine, then you will make on all those other drinks. After we eat our dairy meal, we take a break. It's not allowed to be in one meal, and there has to be a time. The custom in Chabad is to wait a full hour. The hour is from when we finish eating dairy until we start eating meat. It doesn't have to be from the end of one meal to the beginning of the other meal. And after that hour, we can eat now meat. And if somebody's coming late, and that happens sometimes, some of the family's coming late, we have to make sure they would only eat meat and milk on the same table, have a different tablecloth, make some type of hecker, some type of way to notice. There's certain cheeses that are 6 hours. We're not going to go into that right now. So that could be a problem. You can't eat meat because you have to wait 6 hours to have to eat those cheeses. American cheese is not 6 hours, and even regular yellow cheese. So there's definitely room to be lenient. Even those that normally do wait 6 hours for that, if it's melted, it could be room to be lenient with that too. When you're eating a sharp food that was cut with a dairy knife, it's treated as though it's dairy. If it's a sharp food that's cut with a meat knife, it's treated as though it's meat. It doesn't necessarily make you dairy or make you meaty, but it's treated as though it's dairy and meat. And that's why a lot of people have special Harav knives for their onions and radishes and garlic, etc. So if somebody ate something was cut, if onion was cut with a dairy knife, you shouldn't really be eating. There's many opinions say you shouldn't be eating it within 6 hours of meat, because you're considered, when you eat meat, you're considered meaty, and within 6 hours you shouldn't be eating an onion cut with a dairy knife. Cheesecake is a common food that we eat on Shavuos, as long as it has any type of mezainis in it, even a small amount. If it's made to give taste, it becomes mezainis. The after blessing is a bit complicated, because in order to make an after blessing, you have to eat a measurement called the kazayis, about the volume of a half an egg. But if it has a lot of cheese and a little bit of flour, so what's part of the kazayis and what's not? It's a bit complicated. So if a sixth of the cake is from flour, then you're fine. However, if there's very little flour in it, then it's not so simple if you make ala michya, the after blessing for mezainis, or ber nefashos, the after blessing for shakal. Best is to make sure that you have a full kazayis for ala michya, a cake which is 100% ala michya, that a sixth of it is or more is flour, and a food which is for sure ber nefashos. Anyhow, you made kiddush, you have to have kiddush in the place of a meal, which either means another cup of wine or kazayis of cake. So you should have cake which is for sure ala michya. Because there's a mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov we mentioned, so we're eating meat. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, we ate sacrificial meat. That was the actual mitzvah. Nowadays, we don't have that same mitzvah. So for men, the mitzvah is to have wine. For children, it's to have sweets. And women is special clothing. But there's still a mitzvah, even though meat is not the original mitzvah as in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, it's still a mitzvah, not a biblical mitzvah, but a rabbinic mitzvah of eating meat on Yom Tov. And it's important not to lose out on Shavuos of that very, very special mitzvah. A lot of people ask questions about showers on Yom Tov. We don't have a lot of time left for this year. I'll talk about this very, very briefly. So you're allowed to heat up water on Yom Tov, assuming that your boiler is a boiler that's permissible to use on Yom Tov. It's not one of the boilers that heat up, that have no hot water in the system and that heats up water on demand, which is the more modern kind of boilers, but there's no boiler there. Whatever you just want, it just heats up, puts out a new fire and heats up water for you that you can use on Yom Tov. If it's a boiler system that you could use on Yom Tov and use hot water regularly on Yom Tov, so you're allowed to heat up water and wash your face, hands, and feet less than the majority of your body on Yom Tov. That's fine. However, washing and heating up water on Yom Tov to wash your whole body is a problem. Even if you didn't have to heat up the water, for some reason you had water that was preheated from before Yom Tov, still the custom is not to wash the entire body at once. And the Alter Rebbe says you're not allowed to change this custom, but you're allowed to wash your body piece by piece, aver, limb by limb, part at a time, with water that was preheated from before Yom Tov. So again, if you're turning on the hot water on Yom Tov, then you can only wash face, hands, and feet. If you're going to be using water that was in your urn, don't ask me how that's safe, but if that's what you're going to be doing, then you could wash your whole body, but piece by piece. Cold water, technically there's no problem with cold water, but the custom is not to wash our bodies with cold water, Shabbos or Yom Tov. But again, you're allowed to wash face, hands, and feet with cold water, shouldn't be a problem. Unless somebody's extremely sweaty or he has rashes or whatever it is and needs to have cold water, that's fine. He's allowed to wash cold water even his entire body because he's in a state of pain. I mean, make sure he doesn't squeeze his hair. Make sure not to use soap. You can use liquid soap as long as you don't put it to your hair. The Rebbe instituted a custom that we should go. The previous Rebbe already, we should go to other shuls to make them happy. The custom of talucha, and that happens on the first day of Shavuos. The men go to talucha to other shuls. The women are sitting at home and they want to prepare the meal. You can only prepare the meal once it becomes night. You're not allowed to prepare the meal from the first day to the second day. So you have to wait until it's night. You want to take out meat from the freezer, so you can't to defrost. You can't take it on the first day, so it's to defrost for the second day. If you're cooking for the first day, just make sure that it's edible and it's time to eat it still on the very, very first day. Comes the second night of Shavuos, you have to light candles. You have to wait, use a pre-existing flame and wait till it's at nighttime already and light candles. If you don't have a pre-existing flame, you're allowed to ask a non-Jew to light candles for you. You don't have to wait till Kiddush. You can light right away when it comes to time. And again, it's a good idea not to push off lighting candles. Sometimes people try to borrow fire from someone else, but you can't take candles in the street, even in a place where there's no wind right now, but a place where there could be wind because it might extinguish on Yom Tov. You have those people that have those neironim. We spoke about that on Erev Yom Tov. It's a good idea to add water or oil. If you want to clean them, you could clean them, but the problem is the pieces inside are really all muktzah, and that could be a problem of how do you get them out because they're really muktzah. So if you put in water before Yom Tov, now you could just, it doesn't stick, and now you could take the glass to the garbage, and once it's in the garbage, you could shake it out, that's fine. Same Kiddush as the first night, meal as the first night, second day Shavuos, similar system, reading the Torah, but we have Yisker as well. Even people that don't go to shul say Yisker as well, if they don't have a father or a mother. But those who have a father or a mother don't stay in shul, they walk out of shul when Yisker, the memorial prayers for the deceased, are said. Somebody who's in the year of mourning stays in the shul but doesn't say Yisker. The custom is that we close the door to make sure only the people that are supposed to be there are in the shul. Some people, for some odd reason, eat their meals very, very late. Now, if somebody's eating the meal very late on Yom Tov, and they're cooking something to eat, and they're going to continue eating when it's already not Yom Tov, so if you're cooking food on Yom Tov, you're going to be eating it when it's not Yom Tov anymore because you're continuing your meal many hours into the night, you're now going to cook a Yom Tov after Yom Tov. You can't cook, like we said, you can't cook on the first day Yom Tov for the second day Yom Tov, and you can't cook on Yom Tov. So on the first day, normally, a person is late, but they normally won't be eating because you can't eat before Kiddush. The minute it becomes sunset, they'll stop eating, although there is room to make Kiddush in the middle of your meal. We won't talk about that right now. On the second day, people will want to they're starting their meal an hour before the night. They're heating up some food and they're going to be eating it at night. That's a problem. Cooking from Yom Tov after Yom Tov, you can't do that. There's the Rebbe instituted a custom that come right before sunset and started actually eat a new meal and have a farbrengen and sing the nigunim. And that meal, in order to wash our hands with a bracha, we should eat the size, at least a kebeya, the size of volume of an egg. Every time we wash on Shabbos and Yom Tov, it's appropriate to have lechem mishnah. If a person doesn't have, he doesn't have. Then I should at least have one full loaf of bread. Every single time, we should have 2 loaves of bread and wash and eat one. And then after Yom Tov, after the meal is over, even if it's late at night, we still say Yal V'Yavi because we started the meal when it was still day. We make Havdalah, we just don't say the bracha on the besamim, on the spices, and then the ner on the candle. And the day after Shavuos is Isru Chag, connected to the Yom Tov, tied to the Yom Tov. We don't say Tachan as mentioned until the 12th day of Sivan. It's the time now to unpack everything that we got on Shavuos, all the powerful stuff that we got on Shavuos, unpack and use it out to make sure we don't lose. It's like when you're going to a fair and you got a lot of stuff with you. Now you have to open it all up and unpack it and make sure you use it properly. And on the day of Isru Chag, we celebrate as well. And those who said Yizkor on Shavuos, during Yizkor, the most important part of the Yizkor prayers is the charity that you committed to, the pledges. So it's important not to forget to actually honor those pledges, because that's really what it's all about. And best to do it right away, not to push off a mitzvah. Hashem should help that this Shavuot should be a year of success, a year of Torah. We should all receive the Torah b'simcha v'pnimius, in a happy way, in a joyous way, in an innermost, in an internalized way. And the ultimate simcha is if we receive the Torah chadashim iti teitzi, the new dimensions of Torah that will emerge from Hashem with the coming of Mashiach. Nami lachem b'gematria kates, with the coming of Mashiach, take it from Yad Mamish. Again, Lili Nishmas Harav Yitzchak ben Eliezer Tzvi Zev, and a shakach again for all those that arranged this year. A gute Nacht.